Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm Alex Kivelstadt, and you're watching 111 Minna TV. Next up, we have Saving Our SoMa Spots with Manny Yekutiel and District 6 Supervisor Matt Haney.
Hello and hi.
Hey.
How you doing, Matt?
I'm good.
So this conversation is about SoMa and the transformation of SoMa and the future of SoMa. So I want to first talk about the transformation of Matt Haney.
The transformation of Matt Haney.
Let's talk about it. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm going to ask anyway. You just lost 38 pounds, fresh on your quarantine diet. What's your secret, Matt Haney? How'd you do it?
Well, I walk all around SoMa every single day.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so amazing. No, I having more control over my own time opens up a lot of possibilities, and I think it has for a lot of people in various ways. You know, trying new things, and for me, as somebody who my job is so much about going places where I have to be, and you know, sometimes those are great places, events, you know, parties at 111 Minna,
right.
Happy hours, places where there's lots of food and drink. I'm not doing as much of that anymore, and I was able to control a bit of it, and I feel good. I mean, that's what
you
it's
didn't
about.
tell me the secret. But we're going to talk more about that in a bit. So thank you so much for coming to 111 Minna.
Yes.
What does it feel like to be in this space right now? What does it feel like to you? Because you have a lot of memories here, you have a lot of experiences here. What does it feel right now like to you?
You know, it feels really good. I feel at home at 111 Minna. I was telling you that I've absolutely been here hundreds of times over the years. I've celebrated birthdays here. I've celebrated many other people's birthdays, community events, and so it feels good to be here. It is a space that is very welcoming, and it's a space that to me represents community, and you know, so it's great to be here. But it's kind of weird that it's like just us, and we're not like where's the DJ, where's King Most, where's everybody coming in, and so it does make me miss. I know a lot of us are sort of thinking about the things that we miss, and one of the things that I miss is being able to be around a lot of other people, and at bars, at clubs, at events, at music, and we all want that to come back.
I miss
think
that.
It will.
But it's nice to see you in person. Again, a different person.
Not that different, come on.
Physically, quite different, but you look great.
Thank you.
You are the supervisor of District 6.
Yes.
Mr. Supervisor. And that includes SoMa, which is why we're having this conversation about SoMa, because this area and the area of south of Market is part of the area that you represent. And SoMa is Rincon Hill, part of the Mission, South Park, what else? Yerba Buena, the East Cut, is that a thing?
Sure.
That's close to the water.
It's a thing if you want it to be a thing.
Do you want me to want it to be a thing?
Sure.
Okay. And South Beach, I think I said South Beach.
Yeah.
And part of Mission Bay. So it's that whole...
West SoMa.
Yeah. So you represent this neighborhood, and this is a really tough neighborhood to represent right now during the pandemic. And it's pretty unique. In that it has convention centers, large hotels, large museums, large event spaces.
All the shit that you're not allowed to do.
All the shit that you're not allowed to do. Literally like the first ones to close and probably the last ones to open. And so this conversation is an important one to have right now in a venue because I think a lot of the people who run spaces like this are really worried about what the future looks like. So the first question I wanted to ask you is a bit about, we want to start on a hopeful note, which is about renewal. SoMa has seen so many ups and downs. It was destroyed in the 1906 earthquake, then it was decimated again in the 20s and 30s when the 101 and the Bay Bridge were created. They wanted to destroy it again in the 70s, then there was the dot-com boom and bust. And now here we are. We just had a huge boom in this area with a bunch of offices and tech companies coming here, and now everything's quiet. Are you hopeful for the future of SoMa? Do you feel like life will be breathed again into this community?
You said I had to start on a hopeful note, so I have to say yes to it.
Well, I said let's hope. I want to hope we start on a hopeful note.
Yes, and I think that your intro to that question gives us reason to have hope. I mean, this is a part of not just the city, but a part of the world that has had such an important role in, you said renewal, I would also say innovation, in creativity, in community. And it was a place where everywhere from the leather community. This is still the home of. I just did a virtual intro for the Up Your Alley Street Fair, which is.
What were you wearing?
I actually did wear a leather vest. I did.
Just a leather vest?
No, I had a shirt on.
Okay.
But
just checking.
But over the years, SoMa has been a place where people, much like the Tenderloin, which is the other part of the district that I represent. Where people who have needed to find a home and rebuild and face, in some cases, even a crisis or an emergency, but do it together, have found a home and have built a community. And the arts community is here for that reason and is so strong. The LGBT community, the Filipino community. And even tech, we think of tech now as like this behemoth of a powerful, it wasn't always that way, right? It started like with a couple little startups around South Park right here in this neighborhood. And because they weren't at home anywhere else and they didn't want to be down at Stanford, they didn't want to be anywhere else in the country. Right. And here's where they could do something scrappy and creative. And I think that SoMa will be that again. It'll be in a different way even. And in fact, in some ways, the renewal comes from the people who really want to be here and want to build here and want to contribute here and invest here are going to stay or are going to come back. And so it's sort of, and we hope everybody comes back, to be clear, but for the people who want to go and do something else because this isn't that place for them, that they were brought here for another reason but then realize, this isn't my place. Then that's okay. Then they can find their place. But the people who want to make this their place, I'm hopeful that they still do, and I think they will.
What do you think it is about SoMa? Why has this been the place of the leather community and the startups and all these major cultural institutions? Like, why here? Why this chunk of San Francisco? Are all these things concentrated?
It was, I think it was a little bit of it has a history of that in the sense that this is where a lot of our manufacturing and our factories and where you could sort of go and build something, literally build something, was here in SoMa. Because of that, it was also a place where people could go to kind of, maybe it was a commercial area, but the little bits of residential that was here were people who were pushed here or people who chose to come here because they could build a community in the shadows, right? And that's where the growth and the creativity came from, And I think that it was a combination of that and, where it sits in the larger Bay Area as well is really important. I mean, it's sort of in the freeway entrance, right? You can get here, it's sort of accessible by transportation. And for all of those reasons, it sort of finds itself not just as a sort of a traditional intersection, but an intersection that can stand in some ways in contrast and its interesting sort of opportunities that it provides by people finding a space that they couldn't find anywhere else allows things to happen. Let's go start a bar that's among the factories and among the manufacturing, and that's where it makes sense to start the leather bars, because everywhere else it was dangerous. Right. They could be attacked. They could be persecuted. But they could find their home here, and they built it because it mattered that much to them, and they would fight for it. They would build it in places where other people wouldn't go, and where they were maybe afraid to go, or where it was harder to be, and that's what SoMa has been over time.
There's something about the wide streets and all the perpendicular buildings and all the kind of saucy things that tend to happen on the ground level and have for so long, that at least for me there's something about SoMa that feels not underground, but experimental in a way. And I feel like a lot of that is lost in modern day San Francisco, but it still existed to a certain extent in the SoMa before the pandemic. Are you worried about that edge being lost, or is there a way that the clearing out of spaces and people and in some cases companies, while in the short term will have an impact on the economy, could actually clear the way for a new kind of SoMa in the future.
And I think one of the things that you're saying is the way in which, and I talked about the sort of different types of uses, the commercial and the residential, the geography of being an intersection, but also what you described is the way that space is unique in SoMa. You can do things here with space that's harder to do in other parts of San Francisco and many other parts of sort of the traditional American landscape,
right.
Because it is urban, but at the same time, you could take over a city block. You know, you could do. I mean, even a building like this, where we are in 111 Minna, is very hard to imagine in many other neighborhoods in San Francisco.
There's more space here,
and sort of interesting things with space, right? And you can even do it in a way where you don't see it, right? It hides, but right in front of you. I'll give an example. In SoMa, there are a number of what I would call, I mean, sort of co-living spaces, but they're converted commercial spaces that are like co-op type environments. And you would walk right by them and you wouldn't even know that they exist. Some of them have like circus equipment inside and like stuff that you're just like, yeah, you've been to that one, right? And now, one of the things that we face now is a new opportunity and a new moment for how space might be used in SoMa. Because for example, you've got all these tech companies, these massive spaces built for office space. Some of them that aren't even built yet, but are going to be built.
Right.
That like probably can't just be full of this office in the traditional way now. Even if they come back as office, it has to look different. But the possibilities of how we interact with each other and how we use space are going to change as a result of this pandemic. And I think SoMa, I'm going to say something hopeful here, is again going to be on the forefront of that.
Yeah.
Is again going to chart a path for what that looks like, not just for San Francisco, but for the entire world, that I think that's going to offer that opportunity for renewal again.
Now, you're a politician. And a politician represents people, right? You're a person, or not a cyborg, though maybe we can make some news tonight and you can reveal something about yourself. And so you have constituents, you have human beings who speak to you, ask for your vote. You ask for their vote, they vote for you. But a lot of what SoMa is, I mean, there are, of course, a lot of people here, but it's institutions, right? The Stud had people, but it was also a place with memory and feeling. And SoMa, more than I think any other neighborhood in San Francisco, is a bunch of buildings that have meaning behind them, less so the people. Right before this, we were talking about all the open spaces that exist right now that are not filled with people, that are completely empty. Yerba Buena, the Museum of the African Diaspora, the Contemporary Jewish Museum, MoMA, giant buildings that represent a lot but have no one in them. How do you see yourself as a representative of these places now, in the middle of this crisis, and how do you weigh what they need versus what people need that in other areas that you represent, like the Tenderloin?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that obviously my number one responsibility is to the people that I represent who are here right now.
Right.
And I have to take, I also represent an area of the city that is often changing and is often in flux, and so actually, the people that I represent today are not going to be the exact same people that I represent if I run for re-election, right? It's going to be and people are leaving, especially this part of the city, regularly, right? And then I also represent a part of the Bay Area where we are a huge source of the growth and the job creation. There are millions of people that come through my district normally on a daily basis, most of whom don't live here, and I have some responsibility to them. And then what you're talking about is to the legacy of this place, right. And the community of people who rely on it, who have memories, that all of that sort of lives here in different ways. And this area has an importance around that I think is even greater than a lot of others. And the reason for that is because of the way that it has been a home and a community for so many people who've come through it, who still have points of reference to it, and who maybe have something that they left here in not in a literal, or maybe literal, but in a figurative way. And they left memories here. They have loss here. They have this is a part of their identity that if it is gone, if 111 Minna is gone, that a part of them is gone as well.
Can you tell me about a memory of loss that you have that's associated with SoMa?
Memory of loss. That's an interesting question.
You've got a lot of emotions. You've got a big heart.
You know, I think that for me, you know, I have a lot of memories, and it's not so much a loss, but you know, for me, it was this year.
He's sifting through all of the things. What should I say?
No. You know, you know.
Because I love that. I love that.
So every year, my dad and I go to opening day of the Giants. You know, and a lot. You know, me and my dad growing up, I had a somewhat of a rocky relationship as a teenager with my dad, and my parents are divorced. I was raised mostly by my mom, and my dad and I rebuilt our relationship, really in a close relationship, through baseball, through going to, you know, at the time it was AT&T Park or Pac Bell, and now it's Oracle Park, I guess, and so much of my memory. And he's still alive, and we were talking about baseball yesterday as they played in a park without fans. But you know, this is to me a part of my identity that sort of lives at that park, and the fact that we can't access it right now, and we can't be there, and we can't go to opening day, affects me and my identity and my relationships, and it's hard, and it's not lost, you know, but it's something that I think that for a lot of people, they have that memory of coming and spending time at 111 Minna, and with their partner, with their friends, and they need this to be here still. Well, you even do have if it's going to come back.
You do have your cardboard cutout, though, at the Giant Stadium, don't you? I saw that.
Yes, my cardboard. We are there in cardboard.
You're there in cardboard spirit.
Yes.
We're going to get to 111 Minna, but I want to talk about some issues that are specifically affecting SoMa first, because you are a legislator, and you're more than that, right, Matt? You are a legislator, but you have also you occupy a place of inspiration for a lot of people in your district and around the city, and so there's kind of a twofold piece of this. In the last week in SoMa, there was a stabbing, there was a beating, a shooting, and a Muni driver was beaten with a bat in a bus in the district. This is all last week. So there seems to be a lot of violence in the district, and that makes sense because there's not as much stuff going on, and so there are fewer people to see things. So how are you thinking about that, and has that been brought to your attention, and how do you think that affects the small businesses that are trying to operate in SoMa?
I mean, it's hard. I think that so much of our focus has been on the pandemic and the health consequences of it,
right?
And as it should be, and the health prevention. But I think we are only now beginning to realize that there were a lot of other consequences to what this time has brought about in terms of hopelessness and fear and anxiety and hatred, and it sure doesn't help when you have that message being propagated from the White House, right? And then you have people who are more lonely or who are more economically depressed, or who have a tremendous sense of loss or hopelessness. And then you have, on top of all that, just less people around, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of disruption and disconnection, I think, does lead to more violence. And the lack of the city's ability to respond even in normal ways. And there's a lot that I think that was normal that we should not return to. But at the same time, the city is not sort of prepared in the same ways to respond to some of the consequences of this, and we're distracted, I think, more in the health aspects of it. And so, and also, like, we are in one of the worst economic depressions that we've seen in 100 years, and what that means in terms of people's sort of behavior towards each other.
Right.
There's no way that that's not going to have some impact. And I'm not excusing any of the behavior. It's awful.
Right.
But I do think that we have to be prepared to respond to that as well.
Okay.
At the same time as we're thinking about the health, the more traditional health thing.
It's my hope that it's a blip, and then we don't see. I don't know about you, maybe we're both Jewish, so I was going to say it's the optimistic side of my Jewish heritage, not the pessimistic side. That exists too. But there's a part of me that does think that there's going to be a vaccine in October and everyone's going to get it, and in December you and I are going to go to a music festival and no one's going to wear a mask and all the businesses are going to reopen, and it's going to be this, orgiastic kind of, hypothetically, experience, and that we'll bounce back quick. Do you not feel that way? Do you think we're in this for the long haul, Matt?
I'm a hopeful person. I don't quite think that what you just described is going to happen. I think that I'm more of a it is what it is kind of person.
Okay.
And we are adaptive. We are adaptive as a species. We are adaptive certainly here in San Francisco. And let's fix the bad and amplify the good.
Yeah.
Let's use this as a moment of opportunity. Let's look out for people who are vulnerable in this moment, but who were vulnerable before too, and who weren't especially taken care of during the normal times, right? This was a shitty, hard place to build a small business, as you know, before this pandemic. And now all of a sudden you're looking outside on the street in Valencia, at least on Thursday through Sunday, and you're seeing a street that's been shut down in a way that it should have happened years ago, being used as a way to build community and reclaim space. And so let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
But so we have to get through this, and I don't know if we'll be done by December, but we will get through this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the way that people are responding and thinking creatively and thinking differently and saying, wow, let's actually do this thing that we knew we should have done before, but now we can, and we will never go back to the way it was, is really hopeful. I see a lot of things that make me excited about the world that we are going to occupy, and we can occupy after this is done. And there's still a lot of uncertainty. It could go bad. It could go really bad. And obviously none of that is worth the cost in human lives. None of that. I would never say, well, it's all worth it. Of course not. If this could end tomorrow and we could still have nothing but cars on Valencia but people's lives were saved, I would still, of course, trade that.
Right.
But in this moment, for the people who are losing their lives or who are losing their loved ones, I think what they would want and what they do want is for us to come out of this better towards each other. Whatever that means, and that's what the sacrifice that the folks who lost loved ones is, that we remember them and we come out of this better towards each other. And I think that we can, and I think we are moving in that direction.
So something that people talk about a lot, and I know is something you've been working on for almost 2 years now, is the conversation around cleaner streets in San Francisco. I know this is important to you. Can you talk a little bit about the issue of clean streets and what you're doing to address it?
Yes, you make it sound like I have this weird obsession with this, but
it kind of feels like
I have I'm really fired up about feces and trash cans, and it's sort of weird. Part of the reason, actually, well, many reasons. I live in the Tenderloin, and I actually live on what the New York Times called the dirtiest block in San Francisco. And this is already in a city that's not exactly known to be clean. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it does rise up my sort of own feeling of civic pride, and I hope it does for a lot of people, that when people refer to San Francisco now, in the nightly news or whatever, it's just known that we're just filthy and trash and poop everywhere, right? I mean, that we sort of become known for that, and my sense of that is, one, I hate that. I hate that we're viewed that way. I also know that for people who live in it, the people that I represent, it's really just an awful indication of how their own city feels about them and their human dignity and their quality of life. To step out, it's sort of a butt of jokes, right? But if you step outside and every day you have to, step over poop on your sidewalk, it's hard to sort of believe in a lot of other things about your city. And so I have focused on this It's my view that the city can actually solve this problem, that a city that is one of the most innovative places in the world with a $12 billion budget can actually solve this problem.
Yeah.
And so, I proposed a ballot initiative that would create for the first time a Department of Sanitation and Streets and have real baseline services and oversight and accountability. But at the end of the day, we have to believe that we can solve this problem. And a lot of it has to do with prevention, and common sense, like trash cans at work, like bathrooms that are 24 hours, like actually pressure washing the streets. So, it's an obsession of mine. And I guess I would say, just as a last thing about this, it's my view that, San Francisco, sometimes because we're always thinking so big and we're always, we want to stand up to Trump and we want to do every other thing, that we stop doing some of the basics right. And because of that, I think people have lost some level of trust and faith in our city government to even do the bigger things. And so I think we should go back to basics.
So this is going to be on the November ballot.
Yes.
This coming November.
Department of Sanitation and Streets. And I've spent 2 years on it.
People should vote for it?
Not to give a whole advertisement. Yes, please vote for it.
Okay.
It doesn't have a proposition letter yet.
But if it did, what would you choose it to be? S? For sanitation and streets,
yes.
Maybe?
Please.
Great. Okay, good to know.
Yes.
So what does that radical imagination look like for the SoMa district? What is you mentioned Valencia, and it was beautiful this weekend. There were kids and families chalking Black Lives Matter on Valencia Street. There was a unicyclist last night unicycling around Valencia, and musical artists and people safely social distancing, and there was joy in the middle of the street. And you're right, I couldn't have imagined that happening. I wouldn't have fought for it, 4 months ago. What does that look like for SoMa? What does Matt Haney's magic wand do in the SoMa district to take advantage of this opportunity and have it come out even better than it was before?
I spoke a bit about the things that I love about SoMa, and there's a lot to say that I love about it and that I love about the city. But as with everything, there's a flip side of that. And the flip side of what I described is also what is most challenging and sometimes painful about San Francisco as a whole. And in the same way that the creativity and the innovation and the community is amplified to a higher degree in SoMa, in some ways so is the negative, the flip side of that coin.
Right.
And the flip side of that coin is that you've got people who are coming in all the time for all sorts of reasons, and there's often a disconnect between the people who were here whenever they arrived and the people who are coming. And the result of that can actually be, in some cases, less community. We don't really see each other. We don't know each other. People who move in for such short amounts of time, who come here in some cases, with all due respect, expecting that the city should just work for them and should be exactly the way that they want it to be. And if it isn't, because it isn't like whatever other city that they came from or left from, then something is wrong with San Francisco, and something is wrong with all of you.
Right.
That exists to a higher degree in some cases in SoMa. And what I hope is that we come out of this with a deeper sense of the way that we are all connected, and some maybe a bit more humility around it, that we sort of needed each other in a way that maybe we didn't feel like we needed before, and that if we stayed here, this is a little bit of this is a reckoning, I think, that is happening for a lot of people, not just in SoMa, but across San Francisco and in cities and all over the country. That people are sitting there going, I don't have to be here anymore. My, Google said I don't got to come back until July of 2021. Twitter said you might never walk into an office again. I don't have to be here anymore. I'm paying a lot of money to be here. Is this my home?
But the thing about that, I hear that a lot, and I too am kind of like, great, if you didn't ever want to be here anyway, then you can go somewhere else, and that'll leave just the people who really want to be here. Love that. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but a lot of us are saying that.
Yeah.
But the thing is like the reason why I came here, and most queer people came here, was the life that exists with the city open, right? I mean, and walking down the city streets and seeing it boarded up, it's like an arrow through the heart, right? And so like, it's hard because that's what people love about San Francisco. Or some people.
But the thing is, look, and just to be clear, I'm not asking anybody to leave. Like, I want you to stay. What I'm talking about is the positive aspect of making that recognition.
Right. That
this is my home. And, because you cut me off there.
Don't point your finger at me, Matt.
And
put that finger back.
And, Manny, that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to just be there for me. I have to fight for this place. I have to invest in it. I have to show up to Valencia on those evenings, and I have to be there, and I have to take it in, and I have to talk to people in a different way. I have to go and work with 111 Minna so that they can build community on Minna Street and open up outdoors, and then I got to show up for them on a regular basis because I have to donate to 111 Minna. I have to actually fight for the things that I just took for granted because I thought they were going to be there because and I don't want to speak out of turn here, in terms of what you're saying around here, like, what are you going to say about what you love about San Francisco?
Oh,
people fought for that when it was hard, and you are fighting for it, and it is still hard. And the thing about it is that this is a moment where if this is still your place and you have benefited from, or you have been a part of it, and you have taken from it in some way, we need you now. We need you now to give and to build and to show up and to contribute.
Okay.
Because it will not just last on its own, and it never has.
How do you? Thank you. You should do this professionally.
I hope I didn't speak out of. Do you know what I mean?
You and I are just having a conversation. Okay, this is good. You're passionate. Okay. I love it. You're amazing, and you make me want to stay in San Francisco. So that's good. That's good. You're doing a great job.
And you don't have to.
No, I want to. I want to. And also, you said it yourself, we're in this century, this moment that only comes once in a century of economic depression and crisis. And there's some really scary, shitty things that are happening. Jewel just sold its building, I'm not a fan of Jewel, but for $310 million, $50 million less than it bought it for. A huge building that it doesn't want anymore. All these offices that purchased office space in this area where we are around this building are not going to be asking their employees to come back for 9, 12 months, maybe not at all. And there are all these small businesses on the ground floor who are paying a fuck ton of money with the promise that they would make that money back and have a livelihood for their employees based on the people who aren't coming back. I mean, this is a tough sitch right here. And so you are a legislator and you represent this neighborhood. Is there anything that can be done with this situation that can actually avert the worst?
I think that as government, there are sometimes we have to get out of the way and sometimes we have to get in the way. And maybe a bit more so than we have in some cases in the city in the past, we got to get out of the way. We got to allow people to be creative. We got to allow businesses to do their thing in some ways. In other ways, we have to get in the way because we have to protect, in many cases, what has made this place special and not allow us to suffer permanent losses that we have to get through. We have to help sustain. And I think that I feel like yes, we are going to lose a lot, and but I also feel like there are those losses are not, in some cases, absolute, because what is going to replace can also be beautiful and can also be powerful. And there are people who are sitting around now going, well, actually, for the first time, that small business that I wanted to start, I might be able to afford rent now. And I could have never started it in San Francisco of 6 months ago. There was nowhere. And yes, is big real estate going to take some hits in particular? Yes. But if there's anyone who in all of this, I'm okay with taking the hits. It's the investors from all over the world and who viewed San Francisco as nothing more than an investment opportunity.
Right.
And that arrangement wasn't good for small businesses either.
Yeah.
And so now that we're thinking about what is changing, them all of a sudden looking at San Francisco and going, no, that's not our place to exploit in the same way. Well, maybe that's not the worst thing. Ultimately, I know it's hard on the individual, because it's hard to imagine building under the situation that we have right now. But it wasn't always like this. I mean, small businesses can survive in a different arrangement where, yes, you don't have the office workers coming into the same degree, but also because of that, they can't charge you as much rent.
Right. And that brings us to this space. I mean, this place has been here since the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And 111 Minna. And it has seen in this very spot many iterations of San Francisco. And when it first, it has shape-shifted. And it has, from the very beginning, been a space that fostered arts and art community and music. And I wonder how this will change the future of 111 Minna. What would you do if you were running 111 Minna right now? Matt?
I would put on an event with art and comedians and
conversations with politicians.
Keep the politicians more limited, but no, I think 111 Minna has to survive.
Yeah.
Has to be here, and I can't imagine a San Francisco where we don't need 111 Minna. There's no scenario in which it isn't important. And we will, even if we all got to come together with masks and whatever else, we will. Hopefully they can have some outside. But what we know is that the art and the music that finds a home here is not even only limited to this space. That the people who are drawn here because they make art or they make music or they have something to say, they're still drawn here. And 111 Minna can still be that hub for them to share it externally to the world. And I think that's what we're doing now in a virtual way. But the space itself, I think, will find, it will find a new purpose. And ultimately, even when we're all able to come back in the way that we were before, I'm sure that 111 Minna will have learned some things to be able to do things a little bit differently and even maybe connect with more people. Maybe this virtual thing really works and we could do a little virtual and a little in person and every event is streamed and some people are at home. I mean, this is, it might be that way.
I hate it, personally.
I don't know. Some people, it's like instead of Netflix, you're like, I can't. I'm not feeling good today. I don't want to get dressed up and go and. So I'm gonna just, instead of Netflix, I'm gonna do 111 Minna Friday night from home.
Ugh.
No,
No,
okay. I'm saying in addition to people being here. I'm not saying the only.
Yeah. Well, maybe. We'll see.
I don't know. I think people. Look, I'm sure that 111 Minna and the ownership and all of it. Think about all the people who've worked here.
Yeah,
who
I built my small business out of here. I wrote the business plan in the front area. I got my first job at 2nd and Howard. I worked there for 3 years. I mean, I went on some first dates here. I went on some last dates here. I've had, like you, I pitched an investor to support my small business right on this stage in that chair. They said no, but
why were you on the stage pitching?
Because that's just how I do things. Okay. I just pretend there's an audience all the time.
Yeah, that all makes sense now. But all of that, and look, anybody who's built a business like 111 Minna and kept it around for this long and done so many things and meant this much to this many people, they've adapted a lot until now.
Truth.
They've been through a lot of hard shit.
Yeah.
And they figured out how to do things differently and work with different, and it's gonna take those same skills. When things change externally, we think, oh, well, everything that I've done up until now, those same skills, those same responses, well, that's not gonna work in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be different, but the same things that allowed 111 Minna to be adaptive and creative and successful to now are going to allow them to do so in the new environment.
So if you were running 111 Minna, you would be very adaptive. You would try lots of different things.
Yeah.
you would see what sticks.
And I would rely on, to the extent you can, what got you here, which is the community of people who care about it, who are drawn to it, the space, but also the diversity of talent and creativity. 111 Minna is a space that has always been about not just music and partying, but they would have little vendors, they would have community organizations that they'd support, they have art and nonprofits, every now and again a politician, and draw on all those folks too. Because don't forget what was the formula. The entire formula hasn't changed. It wasn't just that you had a space.
Right.
It was that you had a space and you built that space to mean something with all of these other puzzle pieces, and those puzzle pieces are still there.
So you are hopeful.
Yes.
You are optimistic.
I am optimistic. I am optimistic, yeah.
Even with everything that you've seen. I mean, your district has probably the greatest examples of inequity in this city, right? The most expensive penthouse in San Francisco is $49 million. It's on the corner of 3rd and Mission at the new 706 Mission development, and 3 blocks away.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did my research. And 3 blocks away, 6th Street is one of the most blighted streets in the city. And that's 3 blocks. You have a $49 million penthouse. And then 3 blocks away, you have people who are majorly suffering. And you see that every day. I know you see that. And this is my second to last question. How do you, and how should the people that live and work and breathe SoMa internalize and move through the fact that they are seeing around them such tremendous differences in life and opportunity and in experience?
$49 million for
I mean, it looks like a nice building. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they have nice amenities and other things. 706, okay. Well, I think that there's always a lot of reasons to lack hope. But when I look around, you talked about 6th Street. A lot of those areas around 6th Street are SROs. And yes, people there don't have a lot, and in many cases they're living on SSI. Many are seniors, many are veterans, many are disabled. But what I can say is that they found a home there, and that actually a lot of what is happening in my district that a lot of people view as sort of lacking hope or oh, isn't that so awful? What I see is a city and a set of neighborhoods that is still able to give people a place where they can live, that hasn't completely given up on people that everyone else, everywhere else seems to have given up on, that wherever they were before, they were met with, in some cases, persecution because they were gay or trans. They were experiencing violence, they were veterans, and they were let down by the government. All of these things that have led people to end up here. And yet when they're here, we still, as San Francisco, even if it's hard to see it in that way, are able to still put a hand out and a hand up and to say, you matter here and we see you. And I try to see that as much as possible in my district. And I don't, a lot of it is our responsibility. I come from this, I believe that people are good. And people want other people to be successful and to thrive. And, it's politicians that have fucked it up,
Not you.
And so you got to have hope, and if you look for it, it's there in every situation, and that's in an inarticulate way. That's even on 6th Street, where you see something that should make you down. No, hold on a second. Those folks on 6th Street are there because everywhere else let them down, and 6th Street was a place where San Francisco said, we're going to give you your own room, your own apartment, and. And this is your home. And yes, it should be better and cleaner and safer and everything. But, there's hope there. And there's even hope for the people who live in the $49 million
It's possible that person may be even more sad with their life than the person on 6th Street.
And I don't wish them anything except for a fun, sweaty night at 111 Minna, where they're standing right next to that person who lives on 6th Street,
so and
they make a connection.
Solution. It's 111
They make
Minna.
a connection, and they realize that SoMa is their home, both of their homes, and that they see a future for this place that it includes both of them, so and each of their respective happinesses, and it doesn't have to come at either of their expense.
So Matt, my last question to you.
Okay. I thought that was a good,
That was good. That was good. Okay. But I feel like obligated to ask this last question, which is why should whoever is watching this little...
I feel like I kind of nailed that one right there, but...
Why should they support one of... Okay, fine. You want to just...
No.
I cannot ask you the question why someone should support
I think that 111 Minna has, in my experience... This might be
the time where you do the...
It has been a place where... that they've opened their doors up to a set of people in this community of all backgrounds and diversity and perspectives and political and all of that. It's a place where you could listen to a certain type of music that no other place was playing, and communities were able to put on events here, and people got their starts here in a whole variety of ways. And that is powerful. That has ripple effects beyond, with all due respect, any startup or anything else. It happens here, and it happens in SoMa, and the fact that it's in SoMa, and it's a place that represents that identity and that power that SoMa holds uniquely, I think makes only increases its power exponentially. And so I do hope that people support it in the same way that you would donate to a nonprofit or to a startup or whatever it is, because you don't know who is going to be writing their business plan here. You don't know who is going to come into this place and see art and connect with someone and say, you know what? This is my place. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they found a home. And I think that the entire world benefits from SoMa, and when people decide that this is a place where they can have community and create.
Well, you heard it from Matt Haney himself, the supervisor of District 6, and the person who represents this amazing space to our city government and SoMa as well. So please do support 111 Minna for this fundraiser. They need your help, they need your support. What Matt said is right. We have to have 111 Minna in the future San Francisco, and there's a path to doing it, and that path rests right through you. So please dig deep, support big, and let's keep this incredible cultural institution alive, and let's make it through this together, and we can all celebrate sweaty in 111 Minna, however that may be. So thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Matt, so much for being in conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.